And now for something completely different.
Smoke
medical
weed every day.
The following thoughts on Hoppe Hour represent Ryan Hoppe and Fast It. Listener discretion is advised.
Live from Tampa Bay, you are tuned in to Hoppe Hour.
He's the voice of a generation that got screwed by the baby boomers. Welcome back to Hoppe Hour.
Hoppe Hour. Hoppe Hour. Hoppe Hour starts in 4, 3, 2, Hoppe. Hoppe, Hoppe. This is Hoppe Hour with Hoppe.
What's up? This is Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe, and this is very surreal for me. As everybody knows, I now live in Tampa Bay, but I'm from Chicago, and I watch this man every night with my parents. TV legend, Chicago sports legend, Mark Giangreco is on Hoppe Hour. This is crazy. What's up, Mark?
Ryan, how you doing, man? So, let's see. You listened to me when you were a kid, so you're only 6'2" then instead of 6'9", right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is crazy because I would watch you guys every single night. My mom would have it on while we were getting dinner ready. And do you ever realize how much of an impact you made on that city? I mean, you've been gone from the job for 3 years now, and we'll get to that. That's the most ridiculous thing ever. But man, you changed TV forever because a lot of sports anchors were very boring and milquetoast, and I loved how you always spoke your mind. I felt like you were a man of the people.
Well, Ryan, I really appreciate that, man. I really do, and it's great to connect with you. Hey, I always thought that it's a natural transition. You have to be the person you normally are off the air, on the air. You have to be true. You have to be yourself. I grew up as a wise guy. My mother was a militant, in-your-face person. So it just came to me naturally. And, of course, I've got a string of suspensions and a lot of reprimands to show for it. But I really didn't care. I always rebelled against management. I always thought that, the viewers and the listeners should get it straight. And I have to tell you, one of the greatest compliments I ever got throughout my 40-year career in Chicago were people coming up to me saying, "You're from here, right? What parish did you grow up in?" And I thought that was wonderful that I was accepted as a Chicagoan almost right away. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, which is exactly the same. It's just a smaller Chicago, same ethnic mix of people, same weather, same blue-collar attitude. And since I was 8 years old, I just wanted to be in Chicago on the air. I wanted to be Larry Lujak. I wanted to be a top 40 rock jock. And I just sort of fell into television, and I really, really enjoyed it. The best thing about it was I had a very successful run during the heyday of local television and the heyday of Chicago sports with 6 NBA championships, 3 Stanley Cups, 2 Super Bowls, 2 World Series, countless playoff games, and all kinds of characters to cover.
No, it's such an oops. Let me turn off the text messages. So when you covered Michael Jordan, did you realize in the moment that he was the greatest of all time? How crazy was it covering that guy?
Yeah, we immediately knew that he was something special, that he probably was going to be the greatest. And I'd like to think I had a really good relationship with him because we went at each other. I wasn't in awe of him, and I think he appreciated that. And we'd go back and forth, play pranks on one another, give each other crap all the time. And I felt like I had a genuine, very loose relationship with him. But yeah, watching him on the court every night, following him up and down the hallway. We learned how to moonwalk back in those days. You had to walk backwards to interview Mike in the hallway in every arena in the country. But when he took the court, we were absolutely in awe on press row, just like every other fan in the world.
Now, you're a very honest guy, so I know I'm going to get an honest answer. What is Scottie Pippen really like?
I always thought Scotty was pretty cool, but obviously he is deranged. He has lost his mind. I think it's just a delayed reaction of being tired of second fiddle, of being tired of being Robin to Batman. And then, of course, he made a lot of bad decisions. his initial decision to take that bad contract, even though Reinsdorf warned him not to take it. I can understand that one because he was so poor. He came from a big family. His mother needed a house, and he panicked, and he had to take that deal. And then he was so upset with himself that he just resented everyone else, including Jerry Reinsdorf and the organization. By the way, Reinsdorf is the devil too. I'm not sitting up for him. But then Scotty just kind of went off the deep end with the migraine and refusing to go in a game because he wasn't going to be the focal point when Tony Kukoc hit that big shot. He made a lot of poor decisions, and now you've got this weird soap opera thing where his ex-wife is dating Michael's son. It is so bizarre. As Scotty truly has gone off the deep end. I feel for him. I really do.
Yeah, you just see him, and he's doing that No Bull tour or whatever, and I'm like, come on, man. It just feels so negative. Like, I don't even think I would want to go to that if I had an opportunity. It's just like, I was very young when the Bulls were playing, but I do have memories of them being on TV. And I want to remember it as like the team that won 6 championships. Like, my dad had all these VHSs, so I've seen all the games. So like, I grew up with it, but I just would never support an event like that because it just feels very negative about something that was so beautiful for Chicago.
Yeah, well, you think as a fan that when these guys go to war together for so many years and win so many titles that there is an everlasting bond, but there are also gigantic egos in play. And let's remember one thing in defense of the other players. By the way, I read that, Scotty and Horace and Luke Longley initiated their No Bull tour in Australia, and they were very complimentary of Michael. They didn't really rip him. They just told the story from their perspective. And we all have to realize, as great as The Last Dance was, it saved us from the valley of COVID where there was nothing on television as far as sports went. It was produced by Michael. It came from Michael's perspective. He controlled all of the content. And so obviously it was biased. So I welcomed other perspectives. And I lived through that just like every other sports reporter in Chicago got their 2 minutes of fame appearing in at least one of those 10 episodes. And we all lived that for so many years. But I understand that the No Bull tour really wasn't as critical of Jordan as it was hyped up to be.
Now, what was Isaiah Thomas like? Because I know there was the big rivalry in the early 90s, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Michael finally beating them is what got him over the hump.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the Pistons were formidable opponents. They were the bad boys. They were so nasty, and that did, launch Jordan and the Bulls to their championship status. They had to get past the tough guys. Isaiah Thomas is one of the most charming guys you'll ever meet with that big, beautiful smile. But, he's a bad guy. He came from a terrible situation. His family sent him out to the suburbs to play high school ball, and he went to Indiana, and, the rest is history. But he bankrupted the CBA when he was the commissioner. He's pulled a lot of, underhanded stunts. So even I watch him on NBA TV now, and he's really funny and engaging and has a lot of great stories. But I can never forget all the bad stuff. Of course, a lot of that came from Michael as well. So, and Michael to this day continues to deny that he blackballed him and was the one to keep him off the Olympic team, the dream team.
Now, was it ever, I don't want to say hard doing your job, but did it ever feel like you just wanted to watch the game? Like, was there ever a moment where you just wanted to watch it and not have to work?
Yes, Ryan, absolutely. And I will tell you, I'll pull back the curtain. We'd all sit on press row, and after a while, it got very tedious. You're on the road all the time. We would find ourselves rooting for the opposition, saying, they've won enough. Seriously, I don't want to blow Christmas vacation. I really want to be with my family. It got to be that way with most of us on press row. It's like, this is grinding us down. I can only imagine what it's like for a player to go through that every season and have a postseason that goes to the end. But yeah, there's times when you just want a busman's holiday and be able to watch a game without logging every play and wondering what questions you're going to ask in the post game. And, were you going to get positioned in the hallway? And, okay, we've got a live shot to do in 10 minutes. And then you got to write something very quickly on deadline. Sure, it got tiring. But when you kick the competitor's butt and you're sitting around having a beer with your cameraman and your producer, that's the most satisfying part of the job, is when you just grind it out, no sleep, work as hard as you can, never lay back, never be lazy. It pays off when you come out on top, but yes, to answer your question, we kind of got tired of the intensity. And I have to tell you now, as a retired civilian, I've narrowed my interest down to the NFL and the NHL. I, had to cover baseball and basketball and everything else, but not my favorite sports.
I like the NBA and I have the NBA package and I watch it when I can, but it's definitely gone downhill where there's just no defense and it drives me nuts. Like, you literally have games that are like 150 to 138 and it just feels like I remember in 2005, I went to a Bulls game, and that was the Ben Gordon era in the beginning. It was against the Clippers. I remember it very well. And I remember they had that deal where if 100 points were scored, you would get a free Big Mac or something from McDonald's. And the game ended like 98-92. And all they needed was 2 more points, and I would have got a free Big Mac. And I remember leaving mad because they lost to the Clippers anyway. And now that's how many points they have sometimes going into the third quarter.
There's no question. And that's a famous game. Everybody has that story. I think everybody in the world was at that game because they all complained about not getting a Big Mac. Yeah, it's ridiculous. And the All-Star game was a perfect example of how horrible that whole setup is. It's nothing but threes now. It's not even fast break dunks. It's no defense. Guys stand around and they shoot threes. And that's all it is. And this in-season tournament was a total debacle, if you ask me. These guys are making $1 trillion a year, and you have to incentivize their play by saying, oh, each guy can win $500,000 on the winning team. And it was a joke. It was ridiculous. And, having the floors all different colors. I mean, it just shows that the league was desperate. They're losing viewers, and they're trying to come up with some gimmick. But in-tournament championship means nothing. It's ridiculous. So I don't watch the NBA at all. I only watch college basketball for March Madness like everybody else because I want to see if my school's going to do well. Go Dayton Flyers, by the way. And Major League Baseball, I have to admit, I do like the new rules that have speeded up the game.
Yes.
But I won't watch more than 1 or 2 playoff games and maybe a deciding game in the World Series. I didn't grow up in a Major League Baseball town. My dad was a huge Yankees fan, but we had the Cleveland and then the Indians and the New York Yankees on radio and on TV. That's what I grew up with, but all we cared about was the Buffalo Bills and the AFL and then the NFL. So your sports interests are rooted in your childhood. But again, as a professional, as a reporter, I had to embrace all sports. And again, you had to do your homework all the time. But all of us have our favorites. And again, I'm down to football and hockey.
How hard is it being a Buffalo Bills fan?
It's the hardest in the world. I know Bear fans have had it really tough. And there are a lot of other teams around the world whose fan bases are just miserable and tortured. But I watched the Four Falls of Buffalo for the 10th time last week. I just, continue to torture myself. It's so difficult. And the fact that they have Josh Allen is a curse because he's always going to give us hope, but they're never going to win anything. I know they aren't. They're going to be in it. They'll be in the playoffs. They're going to get eliminated right away. The window is always going to be open with Josh Allen at quarterback, but it's never going to be wide open. It's always going to give us hope, and then we're just going to be crushed at the end of every year. Now Stephon Diggs apparently wants out. They need to go get some receivers. It's crazy. I got to tell you, I am so old. I was telling somebody the other day, I watched all 58 Super Bowls live, 50 of them on television and 8 in person. And I was there as an 8-year-old kid in 1960 for the first game of the Buffalo Bills in the American Football League. So it goes back that far. And we're just so pessimistic. The glass is always half empty. We always have a negative attitude, and we laugh about it as Buffalonians, that something's going to happen. Something's going to go wrong, no matter how well the season seems to be going. Now, this year was even more disappointing because they rallied from 6-6, and they had this incredible run only to kill us again. So, again, there are a lot of fans in a lot of cities that can argue that they have been hurt more than anyone, but I'll argue that being a Bills fan is the toughest thing in the world.
I think you guys might have it the hardest because, like, you guys have not won it. Have you guys ever won a Super Bowl?
Never. Lost 4 straight and won 2 AFL championships in 1964 and 65. That's it.
I would say being a Bills fan is probably harder than being a Browns fan because the Browns have never really gone to the Super Bowl, so they don't know the pain of losing 4 in a row. Like, I can't even fathom losing 4 in a row.
Yeah, it's a crusher. I remember Rick Riley, always had that iconic column in the back of Sports Illustrated, and he wrote this big article about, is that all the AFC has to offer is the Buffalo Bills every year? And, as much as I hated reading it, he was spot on. It's like, and Jimmy Johnson, after just smoking the Bills twice, what he said really hurt, but it was the truth. He said they are a really, really talented team, but they're so undisciplined and they make a lot of mistakes, and they will turn the ball over, and they certainly did. And then Thurman Thomas loses his helmet. Also, in the first Super Bowl against the Giants, Thomas went on an end sweep. He was gone for the touchdown. We wouldn't have even had to worry about a Scott Norwood wide right field goal attempt. A Giant was falling and clipped the back of his heel with one finger, and he went down. Otherwise, the Bills would have won that Super Bowl, and I maintain that you win the first one, you would go on to win maybe 3 out of those 4, just with the momentum and the confidence and everything else. I think from then on, Marv Levy, who is one of the greatest human beings ever to walk the planet, felt in the back of his mind that, where would you rather be than right here, right now? But also, right here, right now, I think something bad's going to happen.
Now, which team are you more of a fan of, the Buffalo Sabres or the Blackhawks?
Well, I was very close to the Blackhawks for many years, and still see those guys around. Chris Chelios had a great party the night before his jersey was retired at the United Center. I got to see everybody. So I guess I identify more with the Blackhawks because when the Sabres came into the NHL, I went off to college. And so I wasn't really that immersed in Sabres history until later on. And I still have the Sports Illustrated with the cover of Gilles Perrault on it and the whole article about the French Connection. And I have that in a plastic case, up on the altar. But I guess the Blackhawks because I know those guys personally.
Now, I've wanted to know, are the wings in Buffalo really that good?
Well, yeah, they are. I mean, they're the best. They're the most authentic. And I have to tell you, there are probably 10 different varieties within Buffalo. And every bar and restaurant claims to have the best ones. Now, as history has been written, Frank and Teresa's Anchor Bar invented the wings when they were hosting a private party and they ran out of hors d'oeuvres. So they just quickly decided to chop up some, drumsticks and some wings and fry them up and pour some sauce on them. And then, we got some leftover blue cheese dressing. And, we got some celery here. Let's just throw that out. And then there's another restaurant called Duff's, which also claims to have the best. But you can go throughout Buffalo and find all different varieties of wings from all different outlets, and they all claim to be the best. It's just a matter of what your taste is. I grew up going to a bar called Brunner's, and they have charred wings with some special seasoning on them. They're spectacular, but I think I'm a great judge of wings. The best ones in Chicago, for my money, were Yaxie's across the street from Wrigley and Buffalo Joe's up in Evanston. And there are a few others, but let me say this, and I've had to correct so many people on social media. It drives me crazy. Boneless chicken wings are not wings, okay? Because they don't You got to have the bone in there to make it a wing and make it a drumstick. So, boneless chicken wings are nuggets. Let's just get that straight, okay?
I know. I think about that all the time. People say that, and it's just, it's ridiculous. What's it like in Buffalo? What are some of the cool parts about it? Because I feel like it's not really talked about, and I don't know if a lot of people have been there.
Well, when people go there, especially athletes who are traded there, they fight it all the time. Oh, my God, I don't want to go to Buffalo. Please, no. Once they get there, they love it, they embrace it, and many of them stay there after they retire because the fans are so wonderful. The people are great. Of course, I'm biased, but look, we were always known as the capital of the Rust Belt, the armpit of the East. Depressed economic situation, people out of work, infrastructure falling apart, horrible weather. But these are resilient, tough, ethnic, blue-collar people. And they embrace family and friends, and everybody hooks into that vibe as soon as they go there. And again, it is a small Chicago. The joke is Buffalo's not a small town. It's a giant living room. And if you start dating somebody, you better get a blood test because you might be related down the road, either by marriage or by blood. Everybody knows everybody. It's real close-knit. And they finally cleaned up the downtown. They're a huge medical campus city. They're doing a lot of medical research there. So they are known now for hospitals, research centers, and everything else. They used to be a huge banking city. But again, the revival's taken a long time. They took a few steps backwards during COVID, but they're trying hard. It's never going to be a major, cosmopolitan metropolis, but it's a great place to be from. It's a cool hometown that you can brag about. And again, the Bills are everything, and the Sabres even almost sell out every game, and they're terrible. So it's just a classic case of we love where we grew up, we love who we are, and we identify with Cleveland, Detroit, and Chicago. We have nothing to do with New York City, Long Island, or New Jersey. It's a whole different accent. It's a whole different culture. We're exit 50 on the thruway. New York is exit 1, and it's an 8-hour drive across the state. So it might as well be two different states. Seriously, just like Chicagoland and Southern Illinois should be two different states.
Now, what was your approach to covering baseball in the Windy City? And for you, how exciting was it when the White Sox won in 2005 and then obviously when the Cubs won in 2016? What was that like for you?
Well, I enjoyed both because in 2005, we all loved Ozzie, and Ozzie was so cool, and he was the perfect manager for that great team. And they had enough personalities on that team to carry, every soundbite every night on the 10 o'clock news. But they could all play, and they were all tight. And I remember one classic story. This says everything about our careers. They treated us like cattle, the media. If you weren't the rights holder televising the game, they literally put us in the bullpen in right field in Boston at Fenway during the playoffs, and you're locked in there until the game's over. And I remember Erin Andrews was interviewing Ozzie right after the game. They had won it. And then after she finishes her interview with Ozzie, then they open the gate. It's like a rodeo where they open the gate and we come running out from right field to get to Ozzie and the rest of the players. I hit the gravel right before the dugout, knocked Erin Andrews down. She's wearing white bell bottoms, and Ozzie's standing there looking at me going, what the hell is the matter with you? Seriously. But those were all those great moments. And then, of course, with the Cubs, I love Joe Madden. I identified with Joe Madden. We were kindred spirits from the 60s and 70s. I'd sit with him in the dugout before every game, and all we talked about was music and cars. And he was a big car guy. I'm a huge custom car, muscle car guy. Collect them, work on them. He's got a bunch. And, he was all about the culture of the 60s and 70s. And we just connected immediately. So I loved Joe. I loved everything about him. I loved all his gimmicks, bringing, circus animals to spring training and everything else, all these motivational techniques. And then, he wins a World Series.
Yeah.
And he should be a god here in Chicago. And he was criticized and run out at the end like, players are tired of him. They turned him out. They don't listen to him anymore. It's like, how can you do this? And then he opens a restaurant in Wrigleyville, and the thing shuts down due to COVID. And, I just don't think he got his due. I mean, yeah, everybody loved him after he won it, but then it was like, we're done with him. Next. I was really disappointed in that. And then he went back to the Angels organization, and he grew up with them. He was an Angel for 30 some years, coaching at every level. And then that didn't work out at all. And I listened to his podcast, and, I see him doing stuff here and there. He's very much into his wine now. And look, let's go all the way back to Tampa and what he did in Tampa. And Ryan, I have a question for you about Tampa sports.
Yeah.
I love the Lightning. I love Coop. I love that team. And the Rays, when you look back at their recent history, they win without a stadium, without a ballpark, without any fans, and they continue to win. I think that it's an admirable organization to weather the storm like that, because it seems like every year they're going to move.
They have a weird vibe because they don't have the biggest fan base, but the fans that are a fan of the Rays are very diehard. But there's this weird excuse that this area makes that makes me as mad as you can be about something that you covered, if that makes sense. And the thing that makes me so mad is there's a bridge, the Howard Franklin Bridge, and there's other bridges that go from Tampa to St. Pete. And people that live on the Tampa side or the Clearwater side say the drive is too far to go to Tropicana Field, and that's why they have a low attendance at times. And I'm thinking, I sat in traffic. I grew up in Arlington Heights, Illinois, and I sat in 90-minute traffic to 2 hours to go to a Cubs or White Sox game, and you made it happen.
Worst.
And it's like they go, oh, it's too far for us. I go, how do you think Yankee fans or Red Sox fans do it? It's very weird.
Well, that's a problem with having a team in Florida. There's so many other things to do. It's so nice all the time. And people are in laid back mode. A lot of people are retired.
Yeah.
That's the difference between Northeastern people and, Southern demographics. You have a lot of retirees. It's a much more laid back culture, and they don't really care that much about their sports teams. Whereas in the Northeast, you're working hard every day. You need an escape. You want to connect with a team. You want to be part of a group. It's a natural human instinct to have that tribal thing. You want to wear the gear. That saves you. Where down south and even out west, there are so many other options, and it's a shame. It really is. But going back to what we were talking about, when Joe Madden was hired to be the Cubs manager, a lot of people weren't aware of the success he had with the Rays because the Rays are never on the radar.
I know, and it's weird because their TV ratings, they're in like the top 15 out of 30 teams, so they do pretty well on Sun Sports or Bailey Sports, but they just can't get people to attend the game. And then the other problem, people that I worked with are not going to like me saying this, but I don't care. I did sports radio. In this town, this area is not very hard on the Rays because where the Rays broadcast on, I don't want to say they're homers, but they're contrarians, and they try to be positive. And when I worked there, I grew up listening to like Terry Boers and Mike North, and I want to be more edgy. In this area, they just have this weird thing where they're almost too positive about the Rays. It's very weird.
Absolutely. Again, that's part of the culture. When you're in the Northeast, Boston, Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, Cleveland, Detroit, it gets nasty because people are demanding and they feel more connected to their ball clubs than the people in Florida and California, Arizona. It's just kind of, oh, well, whatever. It's absolutely true. A lot of broadcasters now they feel as though they have to suck up because they're employed by the teams. But fans love media people who they can identify with. And, if you want to call yourself a journalist, I was never a journalist. I was just a wise guy who loved to play with TV and radio, and sports was a great thing to cover and pick as a subject. But I think fans really identify with a play-by-play guy or an analyst who they can identify with, who's going to get upset, who's going to rip them. Then there are guys who are, they're phony rippers, like like you say, shock jocks. They just do it for effect. They don't really care either way. They just suck up to the fans by feigning disappointment or anger, So, well, again, this goes back to the first thing I said when we started this interview. You got to be yourself. You got to be true to yourself, and people will know whether you're a phony or not.
I swear, I have this weird thing down here where like people don't get, because there's like this rivalry between people that are born in Florida and people that move here, and it's hard to explain to Florida because like radio and TV is big down here. But like what got me into radio and TV is all the shows that were on the radio and watching you. And it's very hard to explain to people in Florida, especially in the 90s and in the 2000s and some of the 2010s, just how big the radio and TV scene was for Chicago.
Yeah, and back then, I got into television in 1977. I got out of college in 1974, but I had a full-time job in radio in 1972, my sophomore year. So I worked in the heyday of local television and radio from the 70s, through the late 2000s. And, the internet, social media killed local television, and it's killing national television news as well. So, back then we were in the heyday, as I said. In Chicago, we were the movie stars. We were the celebrities. In LA, you had Hollywood, but in Chicago, it's you picked your favorite news team, your favorite anchors, and that's what you went with. And you had instant recognition in public and all of that. And you were considered as much a celebrity as the athletes you were covering. That was not only the culture of the Northeast and blue-collar cities, but it was also the time. The 60s through 2000, I would say, was the heyday of local television. Local TV news is dying a fast death now. When I got to Chicago, whoever was number one at 10 o'clock would get like a 12 to 15 rating, and one rating point was worth 33,000 households. So you do the math. Now, Channel 7 here still claims it's number one at 10 o'clock. It gets a 1.2. So you have stations here that are getting asterisks or getting ratings below a 1. So you go from millions of people watching to about 30 to 40,000. That's where local TV news is now. And local TV sports is almost non-existent. There are many newscasts throughout the country in cities like St. Louis, Kansas City, and so forth, where they drop sports out of their newscasts completely. And, the advent of ESPN had a lot to do with that. So it's disturbing. I got out just in time. I had a great run. So it's a combination of the culture of the Northeast, blue-collar cities, and the era. And, local TV news is just kind of a supplement now to where everybody gets every piece of information on their phone. You've already seen every highlight, every piece of video, every soundbite. You've read every story before you even turn on the news, even if it's at 4 o'clock, let alone 6 o'clock.
And the thing I loved that you did was that you were outspoken and you would rant, but you never raised you never raised your voice. Like I literally cannot watch ESPN or Fox Sports because I'm just being yelled at. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, that's all it is now. I mean, there are a couple of guys left on SportsCenter who I still think are pretty good, old school guys, but I detest Stephen A. Smith and Mad Dog Russo and Skip Bayless. And it's so aggravating and disgusting to watch these guys. And they're the guys making all the money, and it's just ranting and screaming and yelling. And they're, I get what audience they're trying to appeal to. But I hate it. And when I would go off, it would just be, I would concentrate on writing, try to write something very clever. You can be really sarcastic and really poignant and really take shots, but write it in an entertaining, creative way. And I think I learned how to write from the Jesuits at Canisius High School back in Buffalo, and my mom was all about English and writing and composition and everything else. And that was my base. I try to do something funny with the video, play with the story, always have tongue in cheek. I never took anything that seriously. And I always tried to have fun with it. The most important part of the sportscast to me was not the lead story. It was the last story, the kicker, the closer. We got to find something funny, something weird, something that the anchor's going to react to when you toss it back to him, something really funny. And even if you're stretching that video that isn't that great to make it funny, that's challenging. And I always tried to write something creative. So covering sports gives you a great opportunity to be a wordsmith. Now,
let's talk about the elephant in the room. Now, when you got let go from ABC over the ditzy comment, in the moment of you making that very soft joke that was not that big of a deal, in the moment, did you realize that might get you fired or let go?
I thought maybe I just felt a little bit of a twinge because I know the person so well who took offense. But what was really, and the anchor who was working with me that night immediately said, "Ooh, man, you better call her. I don't think she was going to like that." So I did, and I left a couple of messages, and of course she didn't return the calls. I have to be careful what I say because I did have to sign a non-disclosure agreement to get my money. Our settlement included, you're not supposed to rip the station or anybody involved.
Good. Yeah.
But everybody at Channel 7 and everybody at every other station in this market knows exactly how and why it happened. And I blame the enablers as much as I blame the complainant. This was a situation where we made fun of each other all the time on and off the air, and then suddenly this person takes offense, and it was really one of the most benign comments I've ever made on the air. I've said a lot of more controversial stuff than that. And I truly believe that it was a planned ambush and a cancellation. People know what my cultural, social, and political stance is. I consider myself to be a moderate to liberal person.
Yes.
No matter what I say could be construed as racist or misogynistic. But the fact of the matter is, it was this particular person and me and management that was installed there. It was all about 4 people, and it had nothing to do with the universal discussion. And I just think corporate was kind of tired of me, and here's an old guy who, even though we cut his contract in half because we have so many layoffs and cutbacks to deal with, he was still making too much money, and he has a history of pushing the envelope and stepping over the line. So let's just get rid of him. And she afforded them that opportunity, and she will be there for as long as she wants to be. And she is an untouchable entity. And it's a really bizarre situation, but everybody knows exactly what happened and why it happened. I had 1.5 years left on my deal. I was counting the days to retirement because it became a very frustrating, dark, depressing place to work because of that particular situation, and because the business was just kind of fading. And so we reached a settlement. I got my money. I got to leave early, but I will never, ever forgive or forget. My life is tremendous. I'm traveling all over the world, all over the country. It's great. And I've turned down so many really flattering opportunities to stay in the business, whether it be radio, TV, or podcast. But I had a great run, and I'm just done now. But I will never, ever forgive or forget.
Now, you've said other outspoken things in the past, and most of it, or I would say all of it, I found funny because I agreed with you. And I'm not just saying that to kiss your ass, but as a guy from Illinois, you just spoke for the people. But whenever you did say edgy things, when you were talking on TV, let's say, did you ever say to yourself in the back of your head, like, "Oh man, that's going to get me"?
Maybe I thought twice when I walked off the set, just fielding the reaction from the people on the set.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I just let it rip. I didn't really care. As I said before, I always questioned authority. I was always in trouble. I always fought management. I think maybe I had 2 general managers and maybe 2 news directors in my 50-year television career that I liked and respected. I was constantly at war with them. I didn't agree with most of the things they said. And, seriously, making the move from Channel 5 to Channel 7, I found out right away that 7 was a much more conservative operation, and they never wanted to push the envelope, and they never wanted to take a chance. Where at Channel 5, man, you could just let it rip. Our audience was younger, more affluent, more hip. Went to 7. It was a much more conservative operation. So I had to adjust to that, and I kind of spit the bit and fought that all the time. But I think there was only one thing I regret, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life, is what happened with Walter Payton. And it's the worst thing that's ever happened to me as a person and as a sportscaster. When Walter was in hiding for so long and lost all that weight, and when his son Jared announced where he was going to go to college, Walter showed up at the news conference and just looked emaciated. And so I asked Brad Palmer, who was on the scene at the news conference, gosh, what's with Walter? And Walter told Brad, hey, I'm fine. You just tell Mark I overtrained for a marathon. I took too many diuretics. And so we came out of that soundbite of Jarrett and Walter, and I said, geez, you see Walter, he looks like Gandhi, which was a terrible thing to say to begin with. And then, of course, we find out that he has this horrible, untreatable type of cancer, and I tried to call him 10 or 15 times. And then I'm sitting at my desk one night, and the phone rings. I answer it, and it's that little squeaky voice going, hey, you're a hard guy to get a hold of. And it's Walter telling me, and know now that he absolutely knows that he's dying. And he went out of his way to call me and say, I don't blame you. I forgive you because I lied to you. I misled you. And so don't worry about it. But of course, it's something I never should have said anyway. It was pretty harsh, and it was pretty stupid of me to assume that Walter had just overtrained for a marathon. But, I'm one of these guys, shoot, aim, ready, and just fire from the hip all the time. And that really cost me. And people who never liked me or don't like me to this day are quick to point out, oh, yeah, you said this about Walter when he was dying. That'll always be used against me. And I don't care about that part. I just really regret that and wish that I could have taken it back, and I wish it never happened. So that's the one thing about my career that will never sit easy with me.
Now, what did you think about the way that Robert Feeder would report the news? Because as a just casual fan, I was very indifferent about it. But being in the media, how was it being covered by him?
Well, he was a great, great reporter, and he really researched his stuff and did his homework, and he was relentless. And, he was always kind to me, very good to me, but I couldn't tell him exactly what happened when I was off the air for several weeks into the rating period, for fear that I wasn't going to get my money because we were negotiating my exit. But he was a great, great reporter who was absolutely relentless. And again, the height of his popularity correlates to the height of our popularity. We were all celebrities. People wanted to know the gossip. He was the only guy in town who covered us like we covered athletes, and how people covered Hollywood celebrities. And so we appreciated him. He kept us in the headlines. He kept us in the news, and people want to know what was going on. He's retired now. There's nobody left. Nobody cares about local news. Nobody cares about who's on the air. Nobody cares about... I couldn't tell you who the anchors are at most of the stations in town now. I have no idea who they are. To me, they all look like they just got out of high school. But, that's my perspective. I'm an old guy. But he really made it interesting. There's no one left now. Jeff Agrest at the Sun-Times does some sports media stuff. But people come and go and get hired and fired, and, there are all these layoffs and cutbacks, and then people trying to be innovative with this and that. None of it is reported. Just as Charles Barkley said about the Bulls, local TV news is totally irrelevant. It really is now.
Now, as a Bears fan, I despise Jay. I don't even want to say his last name. I despise him with all my heart because I feel like it was a waste of an opportunity. And I'm honestly kind of jealous of your generation because I wasn't alive for the 85 Bears, and the first year I watched the NFL was when the Bears went to the Super Bowl. So I thought that's how it was going to be every year. But
right.
What did you think about Jay? Because I can't stand him.
I'm assuming you're talking about Mariotti, right?
No, Jay Cutler.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Jay Mariotti, who was the most despicable human being on earth, who was Skip Bayless before Skip Bayless. Jay Cutler, I have to tell you, he did the quarterback show on ESPN Radio with Waddle and Sylvie. And that actually, I think, helped him with fans because he showed some wit and some creativity, and he was kind of funny, and he was laid back. But for the most part, he is the epitome of an arrogant, spoiled frat boy prick. Really, he just didn't care about his teammates, didn't even want to know their name. He was the next Jeff George 2.0, rocket arm and a 10-cent attitude. It's a shame because athletically and talent-wise, he's probably the best quarterback the Bears have ever had. But he was just a bad guy. And then that reality show with his wife, who he eventually divorced, that just showed how much of a really selfish turd he really is. And now, I see now that he's doing a lot of media stuff now, and he seems much more likable. I mean, look at Ryan Leaf has carved out a nice media career, and he's great to listen to, and he's very smart and has a lot of insights. So, people do come around and do mold into likable human beings, albeit late in life. But during his playing days, he was a bad guy. He really was.
I just don't like, I saw this post on Facebook this afternoon, and it said that he was one of the only quarterbacks that would bench press weights. And the post was kind of like applauding him for doing that. I think it was at the Combine or something. And I shared it, and I said, how many playoff wins did he have, and how many Super Bowls did we win? There's this weird thing, I think it's because the Bears are bad now, that people, it's like romanticizing an ex-girlfriend or ex-wife. People are romanticizing Jay, and I go, the guy couldn't do anything. Even in 2010, 2011, he could have won that game that would have taken the Packers out of the Super Bowl. I'll never forget it. I was watching the game at my uncle's house, who's a diehard Bears fan, and he just throws that interception. I think it might have been to Charles Woodson. He was such a waste.
Well, again, a great talent, but he was a jerk, and he didn't care. Probably didn't even care that he threw the pick. Football just made him money, and it was just kind of an thing. But it's funny how he's morphed into this credible analyst now. Revisionist history is just something in sports. It's always going to be there. And again, I don't think you can ever compare eras. You see all these little things on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, all these trolls with these trigger questions. Who was the greatest, blah, blah, blah. You can't compare eras. You cannot compare eras in any sport. And it's just for the sake of argument and people screaming and yelling at each other and so intense about it. So, God, just so dramatic and so immersed. And it's just like, geez, let it go, man. Honest to God. Like today, there's a thing. Who is the greatest athlete ever to wear a number 7? So I said Mickey Mantle. And then I have this guy coming back at me like, they said athlete. Baseball players weren't athletes. It was John Elway. And then this other guy suddenly goes full global racist, saying, well, just because he was the fastest guy of his era doesn't mean anything because they're all white guys. And I'm like, wow, geez, we're just talking about jersey numbers, but it sparks that kind of vicious, emotional, passionate response. You cannot have a discussion on social media. It's just attack, counterattack. That's all it is. But again, when, years go by, people are forgiven, people are given a second chance. And then you kind of massage the story as to, well, he wasn't that bad, or, bad circumstances. Yeah, but when you're living in the moment, he was a bad guy.
Now, before I let you go, I can't believe we've been talking for 49 minutes. It's crazy. This has just been one of my best moments so far in life. I swear, I grew up watching you every single night, man. This is crazy. What are some?
Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Really, it means a lot.
What are things you do during the day? So now that you are no longer on TV, I know you said earlier in the show that you travel the world. So you travel the world. What are other things that Mark Giangreco does in 2024?
Well, there are some days, I'll be honest with you, when there's nothing to do. So I make sure I have something to do. You don't want to be sitting around wasting time sitting in front of the television. And especially, I would never watch another local newscast ever the rest of my life, especially Channel 7, because would you ever eat in a restaurant where you once worked in the kitchen? Never.
Yeah, no.
So I have no interest in sitting in front of the TV. So, I try to work out. I try to stay active. I'm obsessed with cars. So I still hold interest in custom cars and buying and selling and trading old cars from the 60s and 70s, hot rods and customs. World of Wheels is coming up this weekend here in Chicago. I had a 57 T-Bird that won World of Wheels, Autorama in Detroit, the Good Guys show in Columbus. So I'm big with that. I went to art school as a kid. I kind of inherited the talent from a grandmother and an aunt. So I'm back drawing and painting a little bit. But mostly my priority is my family and my friends. My 3 sons married the right people, and I've got 4 grandkids. And my best friends to this day are my high school and college buddies. And we plan all kinds of trips. And so I just can't be stagnant. I can't be sitting around. I don't think I'm ever going to move out of Chicago. People always say to me, dude, why don't you get out of there? Geez, you got to retire to Florida, Arizona, California, or something. I love the city. I live in the city. I raise my kids in the burbs. But since 2000, I've been downtown, and I still love the vibe, and everybody rips this place. But those are the people that don't really live here. And yeah, we've got major, major, major serious problems as a big city. But this will always be my base, and I just launch myself from here. And I have to tell you, and a lot of people will say that the more you travel the world, the more you realize that other countries do things a lot better than the United States does.
Oh, yeah.
In many, many ways. And it's just enjoyable. Because I traveled a lot when I was working, but it was all work. People are like, wow, what a glamorous life. You were in Paris with the Bulls, and, you did this, you were at the Olympics, and blah, blah, blah. Those kind of things were airport, hotel, arena. That's it, period. So now I get to be a real tourist, and I get to be a historian. And so, yeah, it's family, friends, and just I'm on a plane at least once a week. I mean, once a month, I would say. I think traveling, I have some friends who have a bucket list. They just completed all 50 states, and now they want to do every continent. I don't know if I'm going to be able to catch up with them, but I just want to keep going.
Now, before I let you go, as a retiree and a man that travels the world, how do you want people to remember you on TV and on the radio?
Well, I've already gotten a lot of great reaction, which I appreciate so much. And I just always want to be remembered as a guy who was true to himself, who was the same on the air, the way he was off the air, a smart ass, a wise guy, a sarcastic person who tried to entertain more than inform. I think overall, I had a great, great career. And like I said, I do have some major regrets, and I wish I had a few do-overs here and there. But this city embraced me, and I'll always appreciate that. And so, I'm one of those self-loathing guys. I'm always so critical of me. I've always been my worst critic. And if you're a perfectionist and you're a workaholic, that's going to haunt you forever. And that's the way my dad was. I inherited that. But I think overall, I think people in town liked what I did and respected my, style. So I think I'm okay with it. I think I'm pretty satisfied with the way I appear to be remembered at this point.
Now, where can people find you online?
Well, I'm on Twitter at Mark/Giangreco. My Facebook page has been hacked.
Oh, man.
And I've had all kinds of professional geeks try to get it back, but I just have to, put up a new Facebook page, create a whole new one. I'm on Instagram, but I usually just glean other people's photos and check things out. I don't post a lot of stuff on there, but I'm on Twitter. I'll never call it X.
Yeah, it's dumb.
Just about every day, so people can check me out there.
Yeah, you're not really missing much on Facebook. This morning, Facebook was down, and I thought I got hacked.
Right.
And my social media is doing really well right now. And I would say I'm beginning to get my big break in life. And I swear, I was panicking. I was like, of course, the moment that I'm beginning to do really, like, I've done well in my life, but of course, the moment is when my Facebook gets hacked. But then when I went on X or Twitter, my favorite part about going on Twitter is I can tell if Facebook and Instagram is down.
Right.
Because it will be trending. And when I saw that was trending with 40,000 tweets, I had this sigh of relief, dude. I went, thank God.
Yeah, but we can't be dependent on it. I mean, you can't trust Elon Musk. It's just, It's pretty scary, and it's a very fragile. Those platforms are so fragile that they can go down at any moment. Algorithms are scary. Just the whole grid is a scary thing. It's so fragile. It's so insecure. I just have to take a break every once in a while. All I want to know is, did you ever find an apartment where you don't hit your head on the ceiling?
Oh man, I hit my head on many places, dude. It's very crazy being 6'9". I used to make jokes in high school when I would try to impress the girls, which I did not impress girls at all in high school. And I would try to say that I was related to Kirk Heinrich, and I would wear this Bulls jersey, not of him, but I had like this Bulls jacket, and it didn't make many people laugh. I didn't really embrace being 6'9" until about age 21 when I moved to Florida. Now I love it. It's funny.
Well, that's good. Hey, just tell everybody you played in Europe. They don't check.
Oh yeah, and it's funny when I'm bar hopping and I'm going to different bars. A lot of drunk people will say I look like Luka Doncic and that I look like Nikola Jokic from the Nuggets. I get those two.
Yeah, big white guys. Well, just go with it then. Just say you're him.
Yeah, I could say I'm in the NBA D League. No one's gonna check.
There you go. There you go, man.
Well,
Ryan, I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot for getting in touch.
Thank you so much, man. This has been a blast.
You be good. I'm going to follow you now.
Thank you, and just do me one favor.
Yeah.
Could you retweet this?
Oh, I absolutely will. Sure.
Thank you, because my biggest pet peeve is when I interview people and then they don't retweet it. It drives me nuts. So I really appreciate that.
You got it, man. Be good.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark.
See ya.
Oh, my goodness. That was Mark Giangreco as he called into Hoppe Hour. Now, I grew up in Chicago. I grew up listening to Man Cows, Morning Madhouse, Jonathan Brandmeier, Steve Dahl, Eddie and Joe, Drex in the Morning. So I've always wanted to go into radio. I went to the Illinois Center for Broadcasting class of August 2024. And radio's always been my dream, and I now work in Tampa. So to all the millions of people that are listening to this, I'm telling you right now, go to every single major platform and search up Hoppe Radio, Hoppe Radio, to check out Hoppe Hour.
Hoppe Hour. Hoppe Hour.
And like that,